Before we delve into the depths of history, remember to hit that subscribe button for more intriguing content. Welcome to our channel where we unravel the threads of the past, exploring events that shaped our world. Today, we're about to embark on a journey, a voyage to a day that cast a long, ominous shadow on humanity. A day that tested our resilience, our courage, and our collective spirit. Now, journey with us as we take a step back in time to a dark day in history. The date was April 26, 1986, a day that would forever be etched in the annals of history. The world was a different place then. It was a time of escalating tensions and political rivalries, the heart of the Cold War era. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, were embroiled in a fierce ideological battle for supremacy. In the midst of this global drama lay the modest town of Pripyat in the Ukrainian SSR, part of the larger Soviet Union. It was home to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, a symbol of the Soviet Union's technological prowess and its relentless pursuit of nuclear energy. Life in Pripyat was simple, yet buzzing with the energy of a community living in the shadow of a nuclear giant. Its people, oblivious to the ticking time bomb in their midst, carried on with their lives. Little did the world know of the imminent disaster that would soon unfold. In the early hours of April 26th, a routine safety test at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant turned catastrophic. The night was still, the workers focused, their minds far from the impending disaster that would change their lives, and indeed, the world forever. The safety test that night was designed to simulate a power outage, a common occurrence with potentially disastrous consequences in a nuclear facility. The goal was simple: ensure the reactor's cooling system could operate on backup power during such an outage. The test had been performed before, but this time it was different. As they began to reduce power to the reactor, a series of miscalculations and oversights led to an unstable condition. The reactor's power levels began to fluctuate wildly. The workers, unaware of the danger brewing within the reactor's core, proceeded with the test. Suddenly, without warning, reactor number 4 exploded. A blast equivalent to 500 tons of TNT ripped through the night, tearing apart the reactor building and exposing the reactor core to the open air. A second explosion, just seconds later, shot a plume of radioactive material high into the sky. The workers at the plant were the first to face the disaster's immediate aftermath. Many were instantly incapacitated by the explosion, while others, despite knowing the risks, bravely fought to contain the disaster, working in conditions that would prove fatal. Outside the plant, the nearby town of Pripyat slept on, oblivious to the radioactive cloud slowly spreading over them. It would be hours before the alarm was raised, hours before the evacuation began. An eerie silence fell over Chernobyl and Pripyat, broken only by the wailing sirens and the frantic voices of the emergency response teams. In the blink of an eye, Chernobyl was thrust from obscurity into the global spotlight. The world watched in horror as the scale of the disaster slowly unfolded, forever marking April 26, 1986, as one of the darkest days in human history. The explosion was just the beginning of a long and tragic series of events. The radioactive fallout from the Chernobyl disaster was a silent, invisible killer, spreading swiftly across the surrounding areas. A cloud of radioactive dust and debris was ejected into the atmosphere, carried by the wind across vast distances. The nearby city of Pripyat, once a bustling community of workers and their families, was transformed overnight into a ghost town. The Soviet authorities were forced to evacuate the entire city, a monumental task involving the displacement of nearly 50,000 people. The residents were told it was only a temporary measure, but the city remains abandoned to this day, a haunting reminder of the disaster. In the days following the explosion, the radioactive cloud drifted across Europe, reaching as far as Scandinavia and Western Europe. This was an invisible enemy, its presence revealed only by the sudden surge in radiation levels detected by observatories across the continent. Panic spread as the magnitude of the disaster became evident. People across Europe were exposed to levels of radiation several times higher than the natural background radiation. The radioactive isotopes released in the explosion, such as iodine-131 and cesium-137, contaminated the soil, the water, and the food chain, posing a long-term risk to human health and the environment. The fallout did not respect national borders. It was a shared tragedy, a stark reminder of our interconnectedness and our shared vulnerability. It was also a wake-up call, a grim lesson in the dangers of nuclear power when not managed with the utmost caution and respect. The disaster had far-reaching consequences, affecting millions across the continent. The fallout from Chernobyl was not just physical, but psychological, social, and political. It was a catastrophe that shook the world, a stark reminder of the terrible power we wield and the devastating consequences when that power is not handled with care. In the aftermath of the disaster, the world was left to grapple with the consequences. A catastrophe of such magnitude had never been experienced before, and the effects were far-reaching. As the dust settled, cleanup efforts began in earnest. Thousands of people, known as liquidators, were brought in to manage the crisis. They were tasked with the monumental job of decontaminating the affected area, a challenge that would take years to complete. Their bravery and dedication cannot be overstated. They were the frontline soldiers in a battle against an invisible enemy, their lives forever marked by their heroic efforts. Simultaneously, the decision was made to create the exclusion zone, an area of 1,000 square miles surrounding the Chernobyl power plant, deemed too dangerous for human habitation. This vast and eerie wasteland stands as a silent testament to the power and peril of nuclear energy. But the physical cleanup was only part of the story. The disaster had also unleashed an invisible foe in the form of radiation, which had far-reaching health effects on the population. Thousands fell ill with radiation sickness, and countless more would later develop cancer as a direct result of the disaster. The children of those exposed were not spared either, with an increase in birth defects and childhood leukemia reported in the years following the disaster. The psychological toll was equally devastating. The survivors lived with the constant fear of the long-term effects of radiation exposure, while the rest of the world watched in horror and sympathy. The disaster had not only destroyed a power plant, it had also shattered lives and instilled a deep-seated fear of nuclear power. In the face of such an overwhelming tragedy, the world had to confront the harsh reality of nuclear power. It offered immense potential, but it also carried a devastating risk. Chernobyl became a stark reminder of the potential dangers of nuclear power. More than 3 decades later, the legacy of Chernobyl continues to resonate. The disaster that unfolded in the wee hours of April 26, 1986, left an indelible mark on our world. It brought to the forefront the catastrophic potential of nuclear power when not managed correctly, igniting a global conversation that persists to this day. The cleanup efforts at Chernobyl are an ongoing saga, an epic testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. Workers, often referred to as liquidators, continue to toil in the radioactive shadow of the disaster, their efforts a stark reminder of the long-term consequences of nuclear accidents. Yet the impact of Chernobyl extends beyond the immediate vicinity of the reactor. The disaster has influenced nuclear policy worldwide, prompting many nations to reevaluate their reliance on nuclear power. It has led to stringent safety protocols and rigorous oversight, with the goal of preventing a similar catastrophe in the future. Chernobyl has also birthed a new form of ecotourism, with curious travelers venturing into the exclusion zone to witness firsthand the eerie silence of the abandoned towns. The ghostly ruins of Chernobyl serve as a haunting testament to the tragedy that unfolded that fateful day. They stand as silent witnesses to the devastating power of nuclear energy and the enduring human courage in the face of such a disaster. The Chernobyl disaster was a horrific event that forever changed the world. A stark reminder of the potential dangers of nuclear power, it shook us to our core, compelling us to reconsider our dependence on this form of energy. This catastrophic event unfolded on the 26th of April, 1986, sending shockwaves through the international community and permanently altering our understanding of nuclear safety. In its wake, the disaster prompted a global reevaluation of nuclear safety protocols. The world saw a shift towards more stringent regulations, rigorous inspections, and an increased emphasis on disaster preparedness. The tragic event also deeply impacted public perception, sparking intense debates about the risks and rewards of nuclear power. The Chernobyl disaster underscores the poignant lesson that with great power comes great responsibility. As we remember this dark day in history, we are reminded of the power and responsibility that comes with scientific advancement.